Top 5 Big 12, Pac-12 thoughts on the Big 12 or Big 10 TV deal. Just kind of sum up, and I almost did one conference or the other, but they really are kind of in the same boat on this and negotiating their future TV deals. Advantages and disadvantages abound, and we can get into that whole Twitter argument another day, but just for the sake of argument, these are similar thoughts that both of them will have. Number 5, this seems like good news, but is it?
No.
But is it?
No.
Because it seems like good news that you have the biggest college football bidder normally with some money to spend and some programming holes. But is that good news? Because what are they going to do? And how much do they really value you? Also knowing that, you know, they can drag it out and there's not a whole ton of other competitors like they'll have. And ESPN has bid against themselves before. They lost money on their first NBA deal because it was...
Yeah, that was a different regime, though.
But, yeah.
That's when they monopolized sports, and then they ended up getting bit in the butt because of it, and really gave rise to all the other networks to, you know, get into the game. But, yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I think, that was the first thing I thought when I started seeing the Pac-12 victory laps a couple nights ago was, you know, and I don't mean it was just them solely. I know there were Big 12 people, too, that thought, oh, this is great news that ESPN's out of it with the Big 10. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe it is, but on the other hand, I need to see more. Again, I need to see this Big Ten deal. I don't think anybody really knows anything until we see what the Big Ten deal is and how that goes. And I know we got, like, time windows and all of that we have knowledge of, but, like, okay, who's in the conference? Who has a chance to join the conference? How in the future could they join the like? What is the grant of rights for the Pac-12? You know what? All this stuff needs to be answered. But starting with the Big Ten. But yeah, I think everybody's kind of like that. That's why the other night I started seeing victory laps from whether it was a Duck fan or Cyclone fan or whoever, and I'm just like, I need to see more. I need to see more before I feel a certain type of way about this. But it's certainly not terrible news that ESPN's not going to be involved with the Big Ten.
It seems that way. But let's wait and see.
Yeah.
How do you build your brand up? How do you do that? This is the same. I asked Mac this yesterday, and he said, look, the plans are underway because the SEC has had state television in the SEC network and ESPN for years now, telling everybody how great it is. And look, there's no denying that it's pretty awesome. But there are things in the SEC that are just like everybody else. You know, the middle and bottom of their conference are just like everybody else's middle and bottom, and the top is pretty awesome. That's where they've been able to kind of fool people in that, oh, the whole conference is great. Well, no. I mean, like, they have really good teams in it. The Big Ten is even more on this in that the conference, out of 16 teams, 7 of those teams are recognizable brands. One of those brands right now, and I don't mean to kick dirt on you, Smokey, is Nebraska, who is not been a bowl game in 5 years.
All you're doing is telling the truth.
So, okay, so then you got 6. Then the other one, the Michigan, is just now good again for 1 year after being really all over the place and firing a bunch of coaches. So, really, who's the brand in the Big Ten? They have one. You're bringing in one USC who is great in the early aughts, but they haven't been great for a long time and have fired a couple coaches. So part of it is building up the brand to be like, man, people really love this. The Big 12 has never done a good job of doing that because in the past, every time they try to say, hey, we're all great, they'd have a stupid way of saying it like one true champion. Or if they tried to build up everybody else, Texas would kind of step in and be like, yeah, but we're here too. And that was the problem. The Pac-12 now, how do you build this brand up and make people see what your good parts are, and you may not have any to build up?
One of the super chats was the blue-collar conference, but it's a much more than that. It's also through social media, through pounding away at who you are and who you want to be. And then you got to go back it up.
Well, you got to go win.
Yeah.
Like, you just go win. I mean, and worry about the rest of that. Let your mark worry about commercials and the slogans. But it certainly doesn't help when your previous regime's talking about one true champion and rolling out a whole marketing campaign, and then you don't decide on a champion. Like year 1 of that campaign, basically. That was the dumbest thing. One true champion. Big letters at Media Day. Big thing on every piece of paper. And then TCU and Baylor share a title. What kind of stupidity is that? Like, that was the dumbest thing. And yet, no wonder people think it's a clown show. Your slogan's one true champion. You can't choose a champion, even though you have a head-to-head. you won't even acknowledge the head-to-head winner. Like that whole thing.
Which in the
whole thing,
in
man.
the tiebreakers actually did not reflect head-to-head as the main reason.
Because it didn't have any.
Remember, Bowlesby got pissed when I said, well, I'm kind of still don't know why he didn't. He goes, that was a part of those. He had to go by the guidelines or whatever you call it.
Okay. The SEC just like switched a rule like 2 weeks ago to, what was it I was reading? It was like I was reading an article a couple weeks ago, and it was maybe been talking about like during the COVID period of like you needed to have this amount, like you needed something, and they just decided like, we know there's technically rules in the rule book, but we're just changing it. And they just changed it. And he could have done that too.
Yeah.
Nobody would have argued. Nobody said, no, these are the Big 12 rules. We have to abide by these.
Well, and I'll tell you, you asked him that question at the time. The day they rolled out the One True Champion slogan at Big 12 Media Days, it wasn't 5 seconds before somebody said, well, I've read the rules, and it doesn't appear that that's the case.
Yep.
And
sure
the answer was like, well.
And then you had Baylor with TCU was one of their once-in-a-lifetime teams. You know,
maybe it was the Big Ten, but it was like something to do with the schedule or like it was something. No, it was the Ohio State exception to get into the
championship.
Yes. Yeah. They changed that on the freaking fly. Yeah. Why? Because it benefited the Big Ten. Imagine that. So, no, I will never just go like, yeah, Bowlesby was the greatest because of that thing right there. That was dumb. I don't care how he explained it after the fact. That was dumb. Yeah. And that just recently got shown. But, win games, win championships, and build an identity and stick by that identity. And don't let yourself just get shoved into the locker on television left and right and act like you're a second-class citizen. Stand up for yourself every once in a while. And that was what was so great about Bowlesby is he finally did that at the end.
Yeah.
And everybody loved him for it.
Yeah. Well, and look, the Pac-12 has to do this a lot, too, because the national perception outside of that conference is that they will do whatever the Big Ten tells them to do, and they did it last year. So now cut your own path, Pac-12. Cut your own path. Number 3, the numbers are lower than $100 million per year. So how can you close the gap? They're not going to close it completely, but can you make it to where it's $25 million and that it's not so bad? Can these two conferences do that? Can that happen? Because $100 million was probably not going to happen for a decade, but 25 you could maybe, especially if you win, if you build up, you can nibble away and balance that out.
Among those two conferences can get that to where at least it's not just a massive chasm of difference, will be the one that survives.
And I wonder, okay, if you make $70 million more than another conference, what is your advantage there? Is it that you're going to have diamond-made facilities as opposed to concrete and metal-made facilities? Are you going to buy the players on your team? Are you going to pay them so much money, $2 million apiece for starters, that nobody can compete with that? So that even then, so the running back at Baylor, who's not going to see the field at Ohio State, but hey, he'll make $1 million, but he'll never have any NFL film because he's not going to play because they just, how does that work? How much of a gap can there be to where it's like, you can't even compete with this? What does that mean? That's what I've been trying to figure out here lately.
Yeah, that's the gap I'm wondering if they can close. Number 2, does this mean that both conferences are now all in with ESPN? Like, are they, what do the other networks take away now? Because CBS is only doing one thing anyway, right? So now that they were just doing the SEC, now they're probably just doing the Big Ten, unless they're having a big strategic shift and they're going to throw a Pac-12 or Big 12 game on at a different time slot. That doesn't appear likely. 2, what does Fox have left after all this? What do they want? And where are those other bidders? So it might mean you could be like the SEC and be all in. One of these leagues could be all in with ESPN.
Wouldn't be amazing.
It would be weird if it was the Big 12 given
well,
what
they'll
happened.
have Fox too, right?
They might. I mean, again,
how does
this? You might. Yeah, you would think so, but you'll see. How does Fox decide to fill a lot of these windows?
Well, they haven't committed to carrying like a ton more games.
No.
So they still have inventory as well.
I'd say no to this just because, I guess the streaming, I just feel like you got to have more than one partner in this day and age. So, especially if you're going to be a bigger conference, well, I guess that won't be until
The SEC just has one partner.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's also them, though. Like
Yeah,
they're
so-
on it. But, yeah, I think the Big 12 is going to probably have to have multiple to create the sort of target number that they would like. But, yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, because the SEC is exclusive. Does this mean other people go exclusive? The ACC is more or less exclusive, too, with them. So we'll see. And how can you stave off the Big Ten? And this is more of a Pac-12 question, but how can you stave them off? What can you promise your people that will ultimately make them say, it's not worth it?
I don't think.
I don't know if there's anything.
I don't know if you can answer that because you don't know what's coming at you or what's about to be released. But I think that's going to a lot of praying, and I don't mean that to be sarcastic, and just somehow hope that things work out. But how do you stave them off? Maybe you get lucky.
You're lucky, or you're not going to. I mean, basically, you're lucky in that they don't care for any of your teams. Basically, is what you have to hope for, because it's just impossible to imagine a scenario where Oregon says, "No, you know what, Big Ten, we're staying right here in the Pac-12." Like, I have a hard time seeing that, and I would say that about any Big 12 school. If Baylor got a call from the Big Ten today, would I blame them if they went? No, I would not. Or TCU or whoever? No, I would not. So, yeah, I think you got to just cross your fingers and hope that it just works out and that they're not interested in your teams after all. But other than that, I don't really see a scenario. And by the way, the Big Ten changed their rule twice in 3 weeks for Ohio State.
No, they did.
They changed it on December the 9th 2 years ago. They'll let them play in the conference championship game. And then they changed the COVID rules, where you had to have you were required to miss 17 days if you had tested positive. They had dropped that from 21 days so that it lined up to where they were able to pass that. So Ohio State changed 2 rules, one of them involving COVID in the championship game.
You want to know who runs the Big Ten?
But Bob Bowlesby couldn't pick a head-to-head, even though they played.
Right,
so I'll never forget
We're
that.
late.
No.
Levi.